Good morning, grade 5. This is Mr. B. I'm recording a video for you today here in Muskoka, and it's a nice cloudy day, but there's still some sun shining and it's bright, and so we can all be happy. The only thing we can't be happy about is that I have been unable to really use my software recently to make the cooler videos. I'm not sure what exactly is going on and what changed, but something's occurred that's causing my system to struggle to use the software. So anyways, I'm trying to figure out how to work it, but I still have to get these videos out to you, so that's the catch here. So I still gotta work and get them done. So I'm just gonna make them simply this week, and I have a solution on the way. So it's just a matter of this week. It's probably gonna be a little bit less exciting, a little bit less funny things going on, but hopefully it's still fun. Anyways, on the bright side, today and yesterday's math workbook work is less, so that's good, right? So today we're dealing with thousandths. So it's a funny word. I don't know who decided that a D and a TH would be a good idea, but that's the idea here. Thousandth. And yeah, in French it's like millièmes, which is way easier to say, and I think in German it's like Tausendstel, which is also easier to say. So I don't know, I think it's only English that has this messed up word here, but this is what we have to deal with, this long monstrosity of a word, which is basically a tongue twister in itself, or at least I find it one. If you do too, you can let me know. But so yeah, so we probably already know and have seen a little bit of this idea of thousandth already. We've dealt with tenths and hundredths, and now we're dealing with thousandths. So as we talked about yesterday, and this is where you would have definitely seen it, we can deal with, these here are called decimal fractions, because they can easily be converted into decimals. Now these can go on even further. There's even more decimal fractions, but I think this is the biggest type of decimal fraction you'll be dealing with this year, so that's good too, right? So yeah, in addition to this, I guess you guys will also have a quiz, I think, on the stuff on Friday, so just be ready for that. But yeah, we're just gonna work through this, and I think you'll hopefully you'll enjoy the thing. Now, what is a thousandth? So basically, like we were talking about yesterday, these go up by 10. Remember, we had place values. These are basically each 10 times greater as we move over, and that's when we're talking about place value, where if, say, I had a number like 550 and point 307, that as you go over in the system of notation, these grow by 10 times, and so that's why these are important to work with, because they work with our notation system the best. So yeah, and what is a thousand? Well, basically 1,000th is 10 times smaller than 1/100th. So that is kind of what you're dealing with. And when we're looking at a thousandth, we'll be looking at something like this: 0.001. This is what in a decimal 1/1000th looks like. 0.001, and that means that there are 0 tenths, and there are 0 hundredths, and also 0 ones, and you only got one lonely thousandth all by himself here. And yeah, this guy, if you have 10 of these together, you would get, right, you go, if you had 2, it would be 0.002, and if you went all the way up to 10, you would get something like this. Now this we've seen before, right? We've seen one in this area before. This is 100th, and now we'll just jump to this idea of equivalent decimals. So we've dealt with this before. We've done this quite a bit now, with the understanding that there are equivalent decimals and equivalent fractions, right? So 1/10 is basically our base unit when we're dealing with decimals. And so we can figure out from there what an equivalent hundredth would be. And remember, you have to times the bottom and the top by the same amount. And when we're dealing with decimals, it's going to be basically always tens, or just lots of tens. So this equals what? Well, 1 times 10 is 10, and 10 times 10 is 100. So now, right, when it's over 100, we're dealing with hundredths. And when we have 10 here, that is 10 hundredths. And these are equivalent fractions. And when you look at them in a decimal form, you'll see that they look fairly similar, other than this one has a 0 here to represent that we're talking about hundredths, but in the end they mean the same amount in total. Now when we're going into thousandth, it's the same idea. It's times 10 again on both top and bottom to make an equivalent fraction, and you have 100 thousandths. Oh, I almost went too far, and that would be like saying this. 1 here, sorry. Oh, let me just redo that. 1, 0, 0. And these are all equivalent. There's just 2 zeros here extra. And yeah, so that's like a main thing. So what is something that we notice right away about thousandths? Well, one thing that we have to keep in mind is with a tenth, you always have 1/10ths or 1 decimal, or 1 digit rather, behind the decimal point. And hundredths are how many? Well, they're 2 behind the decimal point. And 1,000 or thousandths are 3. We can see 3 different digits behind the decimal points, even if this digit is a terrible looking digit. But yeah, we can see 3 digits behind the decimal. And so whenever you see something, no matter what it is, say 175, put the 0 there, this is dealing in hundredths, right? And we can easily convert that into thousandths. This is dealing in thousandths because there are 1, 2, 3. So you'd say 175 thousandths, and that is what it would be equivalent to, right? Thousandths. And there you go. So whenever you see 3 digits behind a decimal point, you're dealing in thousandths. So when you see 2 digits, right, just like we've been dealing with before, let's just say 17, this would be hundredths, 17 hundredths, or 0.17. And then obviously if we have just one number after the decimal point, this is tenths, so it would just be 7/10. Okay, so yeah, we dealt with place value yesterday, so let's move on now to just making sure that we're understanding what I'm saying with all these tenths and decimals. So let's use this 0.175, and we say that we get that from 175 over 1,000. Right, so we're saying these are equal. Now, how do we get this? Well, this one here, right, the one we see here, is really like it's saying tenths. And remember that one digit behind the decimal point here is the tenth zone. So this is the tenth zone. And so we see this 1 goes right there. And the reason that is because just like, and this is why it's important to remember our equivalent fractions, right? We have, if we wanted to know what 10 tenths were in, or not 10, 1/10 rather, 1/10 is in thousandths, right? We would times this by 10 and times this one by 10, and we would get hundredths first, and so we know that it would be 10 over 100, and then we just times this again by 10, times again by 10, and we'd get 100 over 1,000, and so 100 thousandths. And so this one here is basically saying that there are 100 thousandths, and then there's other stuff too, but there are at least 100 thousandths. And so we say, okay, well, there's a 1 there. And then the next one here, this one, is kind of like saying hundredths, right? So this goes into the 7 spot, the hundredths spot, and right, it is going to be, we'll just say like 7 hundredths is like this, and you would multiply that by 10 to get thousandths, and that would be like this, 70 thousandths. And right, so if you have 175 over 1,000, when it's sitting here, right, it's saying that there are 70 of that, right? That's the 7, that's the, when we do our notation, that's a 70, right? And so this is 70 over 100, or over 1,000, and then finally these are the remaining thousands. Now I hope that's not too confusing. I'm just trying to remind you about the place value areas here, and so that this is the tenths, this is the hundredths, and this is the thousandths. Now when we're writing 2 digits numbers, I think we've already kind of figured this out. So if I have 12 over 1,000, so 12 thousandths, that's going to be 0.012, right? And that's because we have the 3 spots. Whenever we're dealing with thousandths, we're dealing with 3 spots. And yeah, basically we need a total of 1,000 to fill up, to make a whole. And yeah, this would only be 0.12, right? So the reason for that is that this is a tenth. So this is kind of, or this is kind of like a hundredth in this case, but yeah, this is only going to be, basically we're saying that in a sense you're saying 10 over 1,000, and really that's going to be just 1/100th, right? So times 10, and you'll get this, right? So that's 1/100th, and that's where a 1 goes into the 100th spot, and then you have 2 extra thousandths left, right? And that's where you'll get the 2 thousandths in the back there. Now when we're dealing with 3-digit ones, it's a similar concept where yeah, you've got your 1 here, and that's 100. This is basically, if you were to look at it, you could break it into 3 parts. You can break it, so let me do that for you guys. This shows that I've done the video before. I recorded it in the wrong file type. So let's just quickly take a look here. So we could break this whole thing up into 3 parts. We could say that it's 100 1,000ths plus 75 thousandths plus, plus 70 thousandths, sorry, plus 5 thousandths. And so let's look at each one of these, and then we can figure out the notation. So 100 thousandths, that's basically, that is equal to, and we can kind of work backwards, right? So 100 thousandth that's 1/10 of 1,000, right? 100, and we can prove this by going like this, times 10, right? And that'll give us our hundredths, and this would be 10 hundredths, and you times this by 10 again, and you're gonna get 100 thousandths. So you can see that 100 thousandths is equal to 1/10, and thus when we would write this down to start, we could look at this by saying, okay, here we go, 0, 1. So we know we have 1/10, and now we go to the next one. Okay, well, let's see. So we have 70 over 1,000. So what is that in hundredths? So we can say 70 over 1,000, and we would say, well, that's equal to 7. That's equal to 7 hundredths, right? Because times 10 times 10, and so we can put 7 in the hundredth slot. And with the 5, we know that that's the remaining thousandths, so that would be 175,000. Now, that is just to explain how we kind of note this down. In reality, when you see this, and you see something like this, and you wanted to convert this into a decimal, all you're going to do is you're going to go 0.175, 5, right? Because there's going to be 3 spaces because it is a thousandth that we're dealing with. We're dealing with 175 thousandths. So that will take up 3 spaces. Just like hundredths took up 2 spaces and tenths took up 1 space, thousandths take up 3 spaces. And so when you see something of a thousandth, you'll be putting them into 3 spaces behind. The reason for going through it like this is just to show you how it kind of works out with the notation of this being a tenth, and this being a hundredth, and this being a thousandths. So, guys, I know that that's a lot to take in. I hope that you find the workbooks not too difficult. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, because some of these concepts are quite difficult and they're a bit hard to explain without knowing how you guys are understanding it or what exactly you're getting, not getting. So yeah, please feel free to just shoot a question to me via email or any other way that you want on the private messages or whatever. But yeah, thank you for checking in here, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye-bye.